us a sense that we are a community. And that's one of those subtle and deep elements that is hard to really grasp or put a hand on and to understand. I mean, what is that community? Who are we? And if I had to think about it, I would say probably we could say that this is a community of individuals who have profound appreciation for Dharma, and at the same time are totally and completely committed and passionate about translation and transmission. Again, I don't want to take up too much time because the program is full and rich, and there are far more exciting things to come. I'm personally very excited to hear Dr. Bellos in a few minutes. But one of the points that touched me most profoundly at the Boulder conference was at one point, the moderator had us do a little experiment and went through the decades having individuals stand up to show how long they've been involved in the study and practice of Dharma. And as we went through 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and many of you were at that conference, the profound recognition when a number of people stood up who had been involved in this adventure for over 40 years. And a number of those individuals are here today. What I would like to do, if you would indulge me, is not go through all the decades, but I would like to ask all of you who have been studying and practicing Dharma, say for the last 30 years, since 1984, to stand. And now, those of you who have been involved for the last 40 years, since 1974, please stand. I mean, it was not so many years ago, the Boulder Conference, and I think there were 3 or 4 in the last group. Now, of course, we're all aging, but I think it can give us some real confidence in the maturity of this community. Of course, the whole evolution of this adventure, this process that we're part of, is very complex, and many of you come from different domains of activity, different interests, different interests and activities, different lineages and traditions. What I'd like to touch on, though, is just one point that, again, Eric mentioned last night, which is kind of one of the threads about which certainly we at Tsadra have been aware, and many of you as well, I know, that going back to the beginnings of things, there were those certain of the more insightful teachers, I would say, and fortunate and insightful students, perhaps, who saw a great opportunity to use the existing institutional structures of higher education in the West to open up the doors to serious study of Tibetan Buddhism and of Buddhism in general. And so individuals made their way into academia, infiltrated, we might say, and slowly, as Eric quite clearly pointed out last night, the atmosphere wasn't particularly necessarily a welcoming one. And over the years, something amazing has happened. So that now, in countless universities across America and Europe, there are thriving, vital departments of Buddhist studies, for the most part chaired by heads who are deeply committed practicing Buddhists. So that today, a young student who wishes to pursue serious study of Buddhism can choose from an enormous number of academic institutions to pursue those studies. And that's something really amazing. Eric also briefly mentioned that there was also another track begun in those early days, one that I was very much a participant in, whose teachers, with their particular insight and students with their inclinations, pursued a more contemplative approach, diving into retreats, always with an appreciation of study, but where the study was a way of informing and educating that contemplative process. And here, the trajectory was different because there didn't exist any institutions in the West. I don't think it was really a feasible question to infiltrate Catholic monasteries. And so the job, the task was a very challenging one. Not to say that this process of bringing or creating a fertile ground in academia didn't also have its challenges and its constraints and its issues, which I know all of you involved in academia work with daily. But it required the building of communities, building of institutions, structures, and actually buildings where retreats could take place. And that as well, we've seen a tremendous evolution, whereas today, individuals who really do want to pursue deeper contemplative training in the Tibetan traditions do have a fairly wide choice of retreat lands, retreat centers, where they can go and do this. The interesting thing about this is these two trajectories, which more than anything else were kind of an accident of history, ended up creating the impression of two separate communities. And so many of us have been aware of that for some time. Many of you have been aware of this for some time. And there's been great efforts to try to increase the lines of communication, the comfort of cross-pollination between these two worlds in a certain sense. We have hybrid institutions, the great Naropa Institute, Naropa University, excuse me, the first contemplative university. We have other institutes such as Nitartha Institute. We have Ramchen Yeshe and certainly many other experiments in trying to move into the in-between territory and different efforts to bring these two communities together. Eric mentioned our steering committee who worked so hard over 2 years, really without pursuing an agenda, did have this thread of aspiration in their thought and work to create an environment that would be welcoming to the two communities. So there could be really a place for mutual appreciation, mutual discovery, so that these two communities, which each has very specific qualities to share with the other, would find an environment to do so. And so it's with some amazement and excitement that I can announce to you today that in this group here today, 33 different universities are represented and 37 different Buddhist groups are represented. So this is amazing. I don't want to go on much longer, but just to say that this isn't Tsadra Foundation's conference. From the very beginning, we were totally blown away by the extraordinary enthusiasm and positive response from everyone. Those that came on board as co-sponsors, all of the partners, and you can see the logos on the banners, all of the invited guest speakers, panelists, who from the first list that went out, virtually everyone was immediately excited and on board. To all of you, when we opened up the registration to public registration in the middle of January, wondering if anyone would sign up, and within 2 weeks, it was complete. So we're overwhelmed by all of this response, but also this is not Tsadra's conference. Tsadra, more than anything else, is about creating opportunities and offering resources. And so I'd just like to finish by saying this is your conference. And so please make it your own. Thank you.